G'day guys, konnichiwa! My name is Wildcard and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for following my content and hitting the subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. If you want to join the club and buy me some Insta coffee, hit the join button down below. And so first stop, 2021 Spring Tour, Wallabies versus Japan in the Empires of the Rising Sun. This is the first home game for Japan since 2019 Rugby World Cup. And we shall see. The selection has been a little bit questionable, to say the least, for the Japanese team. But the Wallabies has really taken this seriously and put up the strongest possible team that is available for the team for this match. So if Japan don't pull something crazy, this should be a easy win for Australia. We shall have a look at the exact lineup in a minute. Let's go through some updates on both teams. First up, Samu Kerevi had a bit of an ankle injury coming off the match against, I think it was against the second game in the Springboks game. Or maybe it was the second game against Argentina. But he had a bit of ankle injury that he was racing to come back for the Spring Tour. Unfortunately, he's not available for this game. So he's still out from that ankle injury. So he's not going to be playing. Another man that is Marika Cornbetti decided to not go on tour this year despite being selected. So he's going back to Melbourne to spend some time with his wife. It has been really tough for him, especially for all the boys out of the Rebels team that are based in Melbourne. They haven't been able to go home for pretty much the whole year. Yeah. And the All Blacks was worried about their teammates. And, so a lot of these Wallaby players still haven't been home for their family. So Corin Beatty decided enough is enough. He wants to go have a break. And also, Sean McMahon is not available for this game as well, just due to availability. And also, this game could be the last game that we see of Quaid, at least of 2021. Because Quaid is still uncertain whether or not he's going to get the permission from his club team in Japan to go on tour for the European portion of the Spring Tour. So, it's going to be disappointing if Quaid can't go to the Spring Tour for the rest of the journey. But I do think the clubs probably should let him go, because precisely that maybe in the Japanese situation, I'm not too sure, because they're still growing as a club. Having a big name missing could be quite detrimental for the club. Not too sure, but my opinion is that the international games is more important, creates a bigger profile for the player, and when the player returns to play for the club, you're going to have a bigger audience. My opinion is that the international games is the financial benefit to the club. But in Japan's case, where the clubs are new, you can decide whether that's a good decision or not. So they're still negotiating to try to secure a extension for Cooper. As of now, he's still uncertain to go on for the rest of the portion. But he is selected for the Japanese game this weekend. So the Japanese team has a bit of an interesting selection process. One of the key players from Japan, Kotaro Matsushima, one of the most electrifying players in World Rugby today. I cannot find exact news that tells us why he's not available for the Japanese team, but I'm obviously, I think it's probably due to restrictions and the pandemic. He's currently based in France, so he's not in the squad altogether for Japan, so he's not playing this weekend against Australia. And there was also a captain's change. We should talk about that for the Japanese team when we come to the team list. And the third player on the field, not the referee, the weather. So apparently it could be pretty humid on Sunday. The weather forecast hasn't been that bad going in. It's about 65% humidity, quite cool temperatures. But as of it's been raining Thursday and it's raining today, so it's gonna be potentially raining tomorrow. Oita, Japan. So on Saturday, it's gonna be a clear day, and the game is going to be played in Saturday evening, so it should be an okay. But there had been some talks about the humidity, and as we've seen the Wallabies playing the Argentina in humidity, what didn't go too well for the professional team, since when the ball gets a bit sweaty, it gets a bit slippery. So if the humidity gets too high late in the evening, it could potentially be an issue. So watch out for that. And if the game gets too slippery and gets too scrappy, Japan could have an opportunity to take out the Wallabies there in that front. Things can't get too messy and the clinicalness starts to drop. Now, let's have a look at the lineup for both teams. Japan, a lot of these Japanese players have played in the July tour against the British and Irish Lions, against Wales, and against Ireland. So some of these players have been playing since earlier this year, so it's not like they've been together for quite a bit now. So they should have a pretty good combination. And they had a pretty good going in the European part of their tour. They did a pretty good performance against the British and Irish Lions, despite losing. They also put out really, really good efforts against Wales and Ireland. But one of the big stars in their very excellent performance in those games is Matsushima. And he's not playing. He was literally everywhere, like making breaks, just such a huge threat on the field. He's not playing today. Another big change for the Japanese team is that the famous number 10, Tamura, he is on the bench. I looked around for the news, not sure why he's on the bench. He is the starting number 10 for Japan since the World Cup. He played the starting number 10 in the European games, and he was spectacular. And there has been a lot of discussions about him being, the biggest hidden talent in rugby today. And, some club in Europe should write a huge check to sign him up and lock him up in the Premiership, right? So he's just spectacular, extremely good, and he's on the bench. So not too sure what is happening there for the Japanese team. Not sure what they're thinking, but Australia has definitely brought everything they can against the Japanese. So let's go from the front. Oh, there has also been a captain change for Japan. So Michael Lynch is also on the bench, the old captain. Lynch, and he's on the bench, but he has also relinquished his captaincy to number 7, Peter Laboshka. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Peter, he's a South African. He's now the official captain of the Japanese team, national team. So yeah, interesting stuff. Let me just get my notes out for the teams. So first up, the front row matchup, we've got Kaita Inagaki at the number 1 position for Japan. Atsushi Sakate for Japan at the hooker position. And Jingwon-ku for the tight head position for Japan. Jingwon-ku is a Korean-based player. Very good to see a Korean representing the Japanese national team. Very impressive for him to get into a prominent international team. And for Australia, the big guns are out for the front row. James Slipper, the 110 caps veteran, Folau Fainga'a, ever since he came back to the Wallabies fold, Fainga'a has really shown, made that consistency in the Wallabies set pieces and lineouts, that bit more clinicalness in the scrummaging, and just really overall brought a much more solid platform in the 4-pack with him being added into the team since after the All Blacks series, and Australia's win against South Africa is largely but because of Fainga'a's solid performance, especially when it comes to line-out times against very, very experienced line-out jumpers in the South African squad. And the big man, the greatest and most handsome man in world rugby today, Tanela, the Tongan Thor, Tupou, is at number 3 for the Australian side. So there's going to be a lot of work for Japan to work. Japan did play against the British and Irish Lions. The 4-pack looked pretty solid. So I don't know how this matchup is going to go, because the British and Irish Lions front rows are world-class front rows. And the Japanese front rows held to their own. So we have to see how this go. But Tanela Tupou is becoming and has the potential to be the best tight head prop in the world today. In the second row positions, we have, let me just get their name right. His name is Jaku Konerusen. He's actually an Australian guy. His dad apparently played for the Wallabies in the 1970s and had 4 tries against the Wallabies. He grew up in Brisbane, and he was a former University of Queensland player. He couldn't get a Super Rugby deal after playing for Queensland, so he moved to Japan, and he's made a debut for Japan earlier this year. Now he's playing against Australia, his national team. He's former, I guess, his country of origin. And alongside him is another fellow Australian. His name is Jemuzu Mua. And he actually went to Brisbane as well. He went to Brisbane State High School. So Samuel Karevi's not playing. So these two guys could have played in high school. So Karevi, I'm pretty sure Karevi went to Brisbane State High School, and he's about 28 years old as well. 28, 27. So those two guys could have been friends in high school. And so Karevi's not playing. But Jemuzu Mura, he is number 5 for the Japanese team. So the Wallabies has opted for Isaac for the experience on the second rower with Isaac Rodder, and Matt Phillip has really grown into the number 5 position. Both players has seen very, very steady, very, very good performance against the Springboks. Isaac Rodder, after coming back to the fold, after being away for a bit, has really just quietly slided back into the team and just, reclaimed his number 4 jersey. Quite with his just, solid performance, not much errors. When a second rower is doing great when you don't see really much news out of him. Because usually what you hear out of second rowers is like penalties, losing lineouts, all that sort of stuff. And none of that. So Isaac has been really, really, really good around par. Matt Phillip had a bit of defensive issues earlier this season, and is also becoming really, really good. Not much, still got work to do, but it's really improving quite a lot. And number 6 spot for the Japanese team is Ben Ganta, and he also grew up in Australia, and he has already earned 10 caps for the Japanese team. I think he plays for the Sunwolves of Japan, and he's up against Rob Leota, who's had 1 cap so far, so he's getting his second test run in the blindside position. And number 7, the captain for the Japanese team, let me see how to pronounce his name, is Peter Rabusuka Funi. So Peter Rabusuka Funi is the Japanese pronunciation for him. He's a South African boy. He's been in Japan for quite a while, 32 years of age. 8 caps for him. And he's up against the best number 7 in the world right now, Michael Hooper, Australian captain, 115 test caps, a wealth of experience, absolute workhorse. And yeah, this would be a big, big, big test to see if this is literally you come in as the newly appointed captain for Japan, and you're up against the best in the world. And so, yeah, really, really big test for him. And number 8 spot for Japan, my favorite big man in probably my favorite number 8 in the world out of all the teams. Yeah, sorry, Rob. It's my boy, Himeno-san from the Chiefs. He's the Rookie of the Year of 2021. I mean, for someone to be making into the starting team for any New Zealand rugby club is quite an achievement. Chiefs had a pretty good season, finishing 2nd in the Aotearoa competition in New Zealand, and he was the starting number 8 for the Chiefs. So playing alongside All Blacks and earning that spot is very impressive. And Himeno-san had played really, really well as well in the July tour in Europe, scoring tries. I think had at least 1 try from my memory for Japan as well. So just absolute spectacular guy. I really, really look forward to seeing him play. And number 8 spot is Rob Valentini from the Brumbies for the Wallabies. 22 years of age, 14 test caps for the Wallabies, and he's also grown into that really, really solid number 8. Just hard, big running support lines and really big belting breakdown cleanouts. So Valentini has really, really developed and grown into that number 8 jersey quite nicely. The number 9 position in the Japanese side is Yutaka Nagare, a number 9 position, 29 years of age, 24 caps. He's up against Nick White, 31 years of age, 42 caps. Nick White has really improved a lot, much more clinical, especially into the South African games. His form was a little bit off due to a bit of injuries early in the season, but he's really starting to pick that form back, which is really good to see. At number 10 spot, Rikiya Matsuda. And he's up against Quade Cooper. So, Quade Cooper, I think that's probably how they pronounce him in Japan. So, this guy's Quade playing against some of his former club teammates / opponents in the Wallabies jersey. And this could be the last game for Quade, as I mentioned. 73 caps. Ever since he came back, he's just been extremely solid. I really want to see how he goes this match, to see whether his consistency can keep up. His kicking consistency has been falling off a little bit. The first game he came back, he kicked 100% of the conversions and penalties. And in the last game against the last couple games against the Argentinians, he's been a bit off. So yeah, Quade starting to get a bit too comfortable there in the number 10 jersey, are you? We can easily cut you out if you stop missing more of those kicks, okay? We have James O'Connor to replace you. So I think it's actually quite good for Dave Rennie not to just, put James O'Connor at number 15 and have Quade play number 10 and make him feel really comfortable. I think having James O'Connor at 10 really, as a reserve number 10, really puts pressure on Quade to perform better, and that's exactly what we want. We don't want Quade to get too comfortable, too confident, too up about himself and starting to feel like the 2011 Quade again. Maybe not 2011 Quade, maybe like 2011, 2012 Quade again, and start missing the tackles and missing his kicks. So yeah, we'll see how he goes this game. I expect an improvement with his kicking from the last test match. At number 11, the Japanese team has Shio Saiya Fifita for Japanese number 11 with only 2 test caps. He's only just started playing for the Japanese team since the July test series against Andrew Callaway, who also debuted this year for Wallabies. He's played, I think, almost every game this year so far, and he's pretty much looked himself as the best winger in the Wallabies team. And from the news reports that he's apparently one of the most competitive person in the change rooms, and he's really worked hard in the gym and everything in the behind the scenes to try to keep himself improving and keeping that winger position locked down for himself. And he's been really spectacularly good for the Wallabies. So, and it's really good to see how people like Callaway motivated in the in working in the sheds. At number 12 position, inside center, we have Ryoto Nakamura for Japan at number 12. 30 years of age, 24 test cap. He's up against a returned Hantai Paisami, who's had a baby. 11 test caps, 23 years of age. Paisami has been really spectacularly good against the All Blacks. Really hard running, just ball of energy and power. But he did have a little bit of issue with his ball security. He actually gave a lot of trouble to the All Blacks inside center, David Havili. So, very impressive in that front, but he needs to work on that ball security quite a bit. There are times where he runs so hard that he can't loses control of the ball, essentially. So it's really important for him to improve on that. Not just hard running and hard tackling, but also improving on that. And now he has really tough competition in the form of Samu Kerevi. So Hunter, this is his chance. Kerevi has a bit of injury, so this is your chance to reclaim that 12 jersey for yourself, to really put on a big show. Otherwise, Samu Kerevi has been playing spectacularly well against the Springboks, and it's widely considered Samu Kerevi is better than Hunter. So Hunter Paisami, someone with a lot of resilience. I look forward to him improving on his performances. And a big performance this weekend as well. And outside center position, Timothy, let me get his name right. Timothy Raffaelli. Timothy Raffaelli is number 13, number 23 caps, 30 years of age for Japan. He's up against Len Ikitau. Again, every game Ikitau plays just improves the Wallabies. I am very impressed. When he first started in the Wallabies team at number 13, I was questioning the selection for him at number 13. But then he really showed and really improved on that. And we really needed a good 13 for the Wallabies. And he plays more like a 12. He plays more like a second 5A, in fact, at number 13, with a lot of passing game, a lot of kicking game involved. So it's interesting how that strategy works for the Wallabies, but it's been working quite well for him. Now, at number 14 position for the Japanese team, we have Remekiro Manoravua. Remekiro Manoravua. And by the way, in Japan, they put the last name first, so Remekiro Damenakua. So the last name comes first in Japan, in case you're wondering. He's up against Tom Wright on number 14 position. And Tom Wright has finally earned himself a couple of opportunities in the winger position. I thought Tom deserved more. This is his second test this year. I really thought Tom deserved more, and he had a okay outing against Argentina in the second test against Argentina. But I think this is his opportunity to really step up. With Corin Betty going back home, doors has been open for Tom Wright to really prove himself, get that opportunity on the field to show what he has to offer. Because I know from his Super Rugby performance, he's quite a spectacular finisher for the Wallabies. At number 15, the fullback position, the Japanese team has Maserewa Semisi. He is actually one of the players that play for the Sunwolves in Super Rugby, and he was, from memory, one of the best players in the Sunwolves team in Super Rugby, scoring tries. A lot of those upsets Sunwolves pulled out when they were in Super Rugby was because of his tries. So very impressive to see him finally making into the Japanese national team. I think he is originally New Zealander, and he's had one game for Japan already so far, so this will be a big. This is probably the biggest test in his career, actually, against the Wallabies at number 15. And it's up against Reece Hodge, 27 years of age, 52 test caps. What can I say? Reece Hodge, Superman, long range kicking, huge boot, everything you want from a number 15. Extremely good under the high ball. So this will be a very huge test for Semisi, to see whether he actually, to really prove that he has the talent to be an international player. In Super Rugby, he was extremely dominant, scoring beautiful tries against top Australian teams and New Zealand teams, setting up for some of those upsets that Sunwolves really put his name on the map, essentially. Now, in the reserves, there's going to be a little bit of changes for both teams. So Japan actually seems to have packed the reserve a little bit, not as you will imagine, just a bunch of new players coming off the bench. So Japan on number 16 position, Yusuke Niwai for Japan. Number 17 position, Craig Mira is coming in for number 17. He's a former player for New Zealand, for the Highlanders, I believe. And he's just debuted for Japan recently at 31 years of age. And at number 18 position is Asai. Let me tell his name. His name is actually Asaeri Ai Baru. So the word ai is actually like the word for love in Japan, apparently. So they literally have the kanji character for the love for ai. But the Japanese actually says Baru Asaeri Ai. So that's his Japanese name. So these guys are up against the Wallabies front rows. Conor McInerney. Conor McInerney, he is coming in as a hooker. He's debuting for the Wallabies. So the reserve Wallaby hooker position has been a little bit of issue for Wallabies in recent times. Lachlan Onagan hasn't been performing that well in the lineouts. And I do think that... Who was the other guy? The Western Force guy, his player, his name slipped my mind. But both of the reserves hasn't been that great. So Dave Rennie is just giving more options to try out to see who wants to solidify that hooker position on the reserves. One of the main thing, it's really about the set pieces. It's about getting those lineouts done just clinically and getting those rolling mauls executed cleanly, and just set piece, just line out set piece is probably the most important thing as a reserve hooker. So yeah, there's a bit of shuffling around in that spot for the Wallabies, testing our new players to see how that goes. And this would be a good opportunity for Connell to potentially locking in that reserve hooker jersey for himself for the rest of the spring tour. And Angus Bell, the best loose head forward for the Wallabies. He should be starting, but, nowadays it's about having that scrum dominance in the second half is probably more important than getting that starting spot. So Angus Bell, by far the best loose head, tight head prop in Australia. Maybe even getting up there to the world. And this is something that you wouldn't believe. He's only 21 years of age. He looks like he's about 31, right? And for some reason, he's 21. And he's just a beast, absolute beast of a man. Imagine this guy at 28, okay, when he actually peaks to his prime. He's still got 9 years or 8 years to get there. Oh my god, it's just gonna be such a menace, and I'm really, really, he's just such a huge bright future for him, and he's already destroying Springbok scrums, who's widely considered the best in the world, and Angus Bell, extremely talented. Alan Alatoa has come back from his baby's duties at number 18, so he's coming off the bench. And Alan Alatoa has really showed that the Wallabies reserve tight head is really missing a beat. So they literally had Greg Holmes, the oldest Wallabies to play for the Wallabies ever, to come back for this spot for the Argentina team because Alan Alatoa was away. So Wallabies may need a bit of depth there. There could potentially be a depth issues if Tongan Thor gets injured or Alatoa gets injured. Then suddenly there could be a massive issue in the tight head position for the Wallabies, and the scrum could suddenly fall apart. So that's something that Wallabies really need to improve on to try to build that depth a little bit in the front row. At number 19 spot for the Japanese, the former captain, his name is Richie Maikeru Richie. So he's a number 19. Heads up against Darcy Swang, who's been building pretty well since he debuted for the Wallabies recently. At number 20 position, Tavita Tatafu. It's actually Tabita Tatafu for the Japanese player at number 20. Only 4 test caps for Japan so far. And he's up against Pisamu, one of the best finishers for the Wallabies. He is instrumental in beating the Springboks, coming off the bench, making those impactful plays, making those line breaks, setting up tries. Really impressive player. So Pisamu back on the finishing team. Number 21 spot for Japan, Naoto Saito for Japan, and Tate McDermott for Australia, coming back after a bit of a break at number 21 position. For the Wallabies, number 9 jersey, number 9, halfback position. At number 22, the biggest name and one of the best fly half in the world, Tamura Yu Tamura. So Tamura, I am not sure why he's on the bench. Highest scorer for Japan, by far the best player for Japan. So we shall see why he's on the bench. But and we shall see when he comes on. That'll be the bigger question. I couldn't find any news. Let me know if you know something that I couldn't find. And James O'Connor, Rabbit, is at number 22. So he will be coming on for Quade Cooper. And at number 23, his name is Dirian Riley. And he is what you might call a professional import. Okay, so he was born in South Africa, and he grew up in Brisbane, Australia, actually down on the Gold Coast, and he went to the Southpaw School, TSS, in Brisbane, in the Gold Coast, the same school that James Slipper went to, by the way, obviously different year, and so TSS, the Southpaw School, is infamous for offering sports scholarships to foreign kids, talented rugby players from foreign nations, to play for them, so they have a good chance of winning the GPS Rugby Championship in Brisbane, right? And Dylan Riley is an import to TSS, and he had a bit of run in. He didn't quite make it, I think, in Super Rugby, and he moved to Japan, and he's actually got his Japanese citizenship last year, according to the news. So now he's officially gonna be debuting for the Japanese national team. So he is literally a professional import. So yeah, in the school, we used to call these kids that gets offered scholarships to go to TSS as imports because they never went to they didn't go to school when they were in year 8, right? When in the junior years, just went straight into the senior years and played rugby because they got a scholarship for rugby, right? So we call them imports. So Dylan Riley was an import at TSS, and now he's a professional import to Japan. Okay, so that is a career path for all of you aspiring kids out there to be a professional import as a sporting athlete for rugby. Anyway, finally he's up against Jordan Patea at number 23, potentially coming on for the winger position for Tom Wright, or maybe potentially could cover Rhys Hodge at fullback, but I don't think he'll come on for fullback. He'll come on for Tom Wright, most likely. Anyway, 30-minute review or preview for this match. I did not expect it to be that long. Thank you for watching, guys. I do appreciate you comments, let me know what you think about this game. Let me know how you think this is going to go. I think this could be an easy win for the Wallabies. I do not know why Tamura is on the bench. You let me know your theories. And thank you for watching. I'll see you guys a bit later this week for the All Blacks preview.